Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Now, people normally want a foursome, right? People are into these multiple sorts of like orgies and stuff. Well, we're going to give you your very own orgy today, right on the air at the Tatiana Show. I have two of my favorite co-hosts of Sex and Science Hour with us today, Stephanie Murphy and Brian Sovryn. And I finally get back Josh, because I think he's done with that Techstars thing and doing all these other 50 million things that are taking away his time from me. So buckle your seatbelts, everybody. We've got a big show for you. Welcome to the show, everybody, today.
Hi. Thanks for having us on, Tatiana. This is so much fun to be back on your show.
Yeah, this is cool. I think it's been about 2 weeks for me, so it's good to be back.
But you guys have never been on the show with us.
No, that's true.
I think that's what makes it really fun. I don't know. So I'm psyched. We don't really have like a agenda, but we're just going to chat. And if people are watching and they want to ask us questions, they're welcome to. But Josh, where have you been all my life? What's been going on?
Oh, I've just been so flat out. Voltoro is going nuts. People are putting, people have, this whole fork's going to happen, whether it's soft or hard. And people are hedging and into private money still. So that's really great. And so it's growing like crazy, and there's just so much going on. It's nuts. So yeah,
it's gonna happen whether it's soft or hard. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
one way or
a
other.
familiar situation to many people listening, I'm sure.
I know. Except hopefully you guys don't take forks into bed. But lots of fun, lots of things. Very exciting time in the whole crypto space. I mean, this big fork's coming, and it's something that we've been wanting for so long. And whether it's hard or soft, like I don't care. I just want to try something. And I know it's an expensive experiment, and it's always been an expensive experiment, even at $30, but now it's ridiculously expensive. But still, it's an experiment that needs to grow, and whether it's hard or soft, it needs to fork to upgrade. It needs to upgrade, and we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. Like something needs to give. Something has needed to give in Bitcoin for a long time. I mean, just anyone who uses it casually knows that the transaction fees are going up, and it's just getting like more and more costly to do business in Bitcoin, and it's erasing some of the great things about Bitcoin, which was the ease of use and the frictionless nature of it. So yeah, I agree, something's got to give. I don't know what's going to happen August 1st. I haven't really gotten too invested in any particular outcome. I've just been sort of listening and watching as this whole debate has played out and raged around me. Because I don't think I'm going to be the one to decide what's going to happen with Bitcoin. And honestly, I don't think I really know what's best. I just am like a user, and I want to be able to use Bitcoin. I'm still going to use it even if the fees are high, but it might be a little bit more difficult to use. So I guess I'm just sort of hanging back and watching how it plays out. But I'm not worried about like Bitcoin crashing or anything. I mean, because even though the situation has been kind of dire in the last few months and difficult, and the fees have been going up, and the Bitcoin network has been clogged. The tubes have been clogged, as it were. The price has gone up, and people are still using Bitcoin, and it's not dying. So, I'm, I guess, overall optimistic that some solution is going to be reached, as long as there's a demand from the market to do so.
Can somebody explain something to me? Because I've asked this question several times and nobody can seem to give me an answer. If I have, let's say, 5 Bitcoin, after the fork, does that mean I have 10 Bitcoin?
No, it means you have 5 Bitcoin. If it's a hard fork, that means there's a separate chain created. So the blockchain is the distributed ledger that shows the history of all Bitcoin transactions in the past and on into the future. And if there's a hard fork, that means that there's a new chain created, where the two chains are the same before the fork, but after the fork, it diverges. It's like they're going along, they're the same, and then the fork happens, and then they split into 2 chains.
Where do my Bitcoins go, and do I have to pick a side?
Yeah, good question.
You have kind of got
still have your Bitcoins, but then you will also have 5 of the new Bitcoins, whether that's XBT or whatever.
So I do get 10 Bitcoins then.
No, because the new 5 aren't Bitcoins. They're a different coin. They're not
So
Bitcoin.
now I have 5 old Bitcoin plus 5 new Bitcoin.
Exactly.
So I'm going to be rich, is what I'm seeing.
Maybe, because if
Why
the
maybe?
value, because if the value of Bitcoin goes down because of the fork, or because there's suddenly like a new supply of these other coins created, that's a possible outcome. Or it's possible that the value of Bitcoin will not go down, and in fact, it might go up. Or the value of the new coin might go up, or the value of both might go up, or the value of both. I mean, the value of both wouldn't go down because the new coin has no value yet, but the value of Bitcoin could go down, and the value of the new coin could stay, 0 or whatever.
And there's also like confusion in the market which could cause the price to drop. So if you have Bitcoin and one exchange calls it Bitcoin Classic, but the other exchanges call it Bitcoin Classic as the new one and the old one is something else, there has to be really tight consensus in the exchange world and the wallet world, because the confusion is what I think is the scariest part of fork. I think eventually the market would just kick one to the curb like they have with Ethereum Classic, and it's just a speculative thing but not got any good functionality that people are building on. I don't know. There's one ICO on it, I think, but
Does that mean that I should just hold on to my Bitcoins and not touch them for 3 months and then I'll be fine? Do I have to pick a team?
I don't feel like qualified to tell you what you should do.
Yeah. It's really tricky.
No one knows anything. Basically, that's my
Brian, what would you do?
I'd put everything in Zcash and then just ride the wave.
Whoa, that's a pretty bold prediction, Brian.
You heard it right there.
Well, some people are doing that. Some people are trying to sort of diversify their Bitcoin into altcoins. Yeah. Some people are hodling till the very end with Bitcoin.
Well, there's precedent for some of that. I mean, like, what was it? Almost a couple of years ago to the day, there in China, there were concerns over, like, how are they going to legislate against Bitcoin? And so it seemed like a lot of the Chinese people or people, whoever were invested in that area, were switching over to Litecoin. So, I mean, kind of using an altcoin as a hedge, I don't think is a crazy notion at all. Especially when it's one maybe like Litecoin, where you still have the ability to use Coinbase, even though I'm not a fan of Coinbase in particular. But yeah, I mean, I think there's solutions out there, and really it will all kind of work itself out. And if any of these, whatever alternative blockchain or something, Bitcoin blockchain that ends up taking over, I mean, they're going to want to on-ramp people onto that. So even if you kind of chose the wrong side, I still kind of feel like just to garner user base and security of a larger network, they're going to make it easy for people to get on board, with whatever the winner would be. At least I would hope that that's how it would go down. So yeah, I'm not sweating it. I think I kind of feel like Josh, we're like, let's just get it over with. Let's end this. Like,
yeah. Oh, that way so over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Tatiana and I are just like the
yeah, I'm just like, I don't want to make these decisions. I wish.
I agree. I don't either. All right, Tatiana.
I think I'll just hodl. Is that what it's? Why do people call it holding? Why do they call it hodling?
Oh, gotta. Okay, there's a great podcast by some friends of ours called Workationing Podcast, and they explain the whole history of the hodling meme. It came from a thread on the Bitcoin forum. This guy posted, Bitcoin's crashing. My girlfriend's out at a lesbian bar. I'm at home drinking whiskey by myself. And I tried to type in the subject of this post a bunch of times, but I kept spelling it wrong. But I'm hodling till the very end. Like, he meant to say he was holding his Bitcoin, even though there's like a lot going on right now and things look kind of grim. But he wrote hodl. And then so everybody started making memes that said hodl.
Yeah. The first post return was, I like hodl, dude. I like it. And then, no, it's a classic. It's been around for years now.
Yeah.
So it's a funny. I love how memes start.
No, it's fine to ask. I mean, now you know where it came from, and now you can be in on the joke.
Well, now our listeners can also be in on the joke, unless everybody already knows, in which case I am the joke, but that's fine.
No, but the thing is, I really find memes interesting, like where they start. There's just random thing. You know, you could never design that. Like how would, you know, because you just don't know what the community just grab onto and really ride with. It's magical.
Well, now we know. We move on to Sex and Science Hour.
Yes,
Bitcoin stuff. So, one of the things that I love about Stephanie and Brian, aside from the fact that they're the power couple of the century,
the power couple. Wow.
Yes, I think so. You guys could be a power couple.
Thank you.
Is you guys have one of my favorite, I think probably my favorite podcast, Sex and Science Hour. Because the reason why I like Sex and Science Hour is because like everybody likes sex and science. Well, maybe not science, but if you mix
right, that's why we called it that, because who could not want to listen to a podcast with sex and science in the name?
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting both.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, you guys bring like a libertarian perspective, but to normal subject matter that's like a little bit more accessible than some of the crypto stuff. And yeah, I'm on season 3 right now. I fell behind for a minute, but I was listening to it this morning and yesterday. So for people who are not familiar with the podcast, tell us a little bit about the background.
Okay, so Sex and Science Hour started long ago in a galaxy far, far away. I used to do.
Wait a minute, you hate Star Wars. What are you doing?
I'm just like appropriating that phrase from Star Wars.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah. Come after me if you like. But anyway, I had this other podcast that was a relationship talk show, and it was 3 hours long, and it was a live call-in show. And during the 3rd hour, it would start to get late at night, and I would usually use that opportunity to talk about topics of a more risque nature. But sometimes, you know, there'd be like science thrown in there too. And I said, you know, I think this 3rd hour of the show needs to be like its own thing. What do you guys think I should call it? And a friend of mine came up with the name Sex and Science Hour. And I thought, God damn, that's perfect. He's a genius. I love that name. So later on, I kind of wanted to change both the name and format of the show I was doing. And so I said to Brian, like, why don't we do a show together that's 1 hour where we talk about sex and science, and we'll call it Sex and Science Hour. And he said, yeah, that sounds great. And that's how Sex and Science Hour was born. So we started out on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. Then we went rogue, or we went independent, I guess you could say. And now it's available as a podcast at sexandsciencehour.com. You should subscribe to it and catch up on all of our old episodes. And we're going to be launching our new season on this Friday.
You know, what's cool about it is that it's, you know, it's got something for everybody, and they're very timeless episodes. You know, you don't really need to be, some stuff you need to sort of listen to currently, but a lot of this stuff has been interesting. Tell me, I want to know, like, people write into you guys. What's the weirdest question you guys ever got?
Oh, Brian, do you have any weird questions that come to mind?
You go for it. I wouldn't accuse anybody that's on the show right now of having written in with some weird questions. So I won't say that, but whatever you could think of, love. I mean, you know.
Well, people have asked us about some pretty crazy sex acts. I don't want to get too like beyond PG-13 rated.
Well, first off, like we get a lot of the names that come in, okay, of emailers. Like there's Mike Oxard, there's Fanny Wanks a lot.
That was my
names
favorite.
Alone
one.
are brilliant. Yeah.
There was a game show, like a computer game show, where people kept on trolling the presenters by like asking really good questions. But having a really dodgy name, so the speakers want to like say this in the chat and want to say that, and it's like Poop Feast 420 and asked, you know, everyone, it's like, I can't believe you're going to make me say this name.
You get bonus points if you come up with a creative name. Like, we're more likely to read your question on the show if you come up with a funny name. And the reason people are able to do that is because we have a contact form on our website. So it's, sexandsciencehour.com. If you have a relationship question that you want to ask anonymously and we may answer it on the show, just go there and send in your question.
Well, I'll tell you, I think probably for me, maybe the best question, I don't know if it was the weirdest, but maybe it wasn't a question. I think it might've been a story we were reading on the show, and somebody responded and just thought that it was really insightful or whatever, but it was asking about sports and like transsexuals. Like, how do you allow, transsexuals into, say, sports where there's the gender of like male, like, I don't know. Give me an example, I guess, of like.
How do you square away sports where there's male and female categories with transgender people?
Right.
We had a really interesting discussion about that. What do you guys, Josh, what do you think? How would you handle sports that have male and female categories when trans people want to compete?
Well, the hard thing is because, trans generally want to feel the emotion of what they feel they are, sexual wise, but they're physically body, kind of, to put it really, explain it like I'm 5. And I think with sport, you kind of have to look at the body and not the spirit, because it's a sport, which is a very physical thing. And it could be unfair if you've got some really bulky, massive transgender wrestler against someone who wrestles or something like that. I don't know, it would be kind of unfair.
I think that's...
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that's a common concern that a lot of people have, that it's going to be unfair because people who have the advantage of testosterone, which to a certain extent gives you a strength advantage, right, are going to compete in women's categories, and they're going to beat the cisgender women who don't have that testosterone. So,
unless there's a baby trapped under a car, then the woman, there's been these known situations where women just go, like, I guess men too, but maybe they should just do that for every event, put a baby under some weights or something, just to really.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea.
The inner woman will come.
Oh,
just
God.
joking, of course.
Well, I hope so, because I get that concern, but at the same time, I don't think that there are a lot of... It's a variation of what we hear with like bathrooms and locker rooms, like, oh, men are just going to pretend to be women so they can invade women's spaces like bathrooms and then rape everybody. And no, they really don't. That really doesn't happen. Most like people who are transgender face so much adversity and so much prejudice and so much violence that they don't choose to be transgender just so that they can get the ability to walk into a female space, There's a lot more serious thought that goes into it than that. And I don't think that concern is particularly, something that people need to be worried about. Although I have to say, like, the lines get really blurry when you're trying to define like what is man and what is woman. When you think about, there's like people who have genetic differences where they, people can have XY chromosomes and yet be insensitive to testosterone and androgens, and they develop as female by all appearances, but they have X and Y chromosomes. And there's numbers of other genetic things like that that are called intersex conditions, where people are not clearly, quote, male or female as we typically define the biological categories. And even when you look at a group of cisgender men and cisgender women, cisgender means they were born, and like Tatiana or me, we were born, they said it's a girl, and we feel like we're girls. That's what cisgender means, that your gender and the sex that you were declared at birth matches up.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, if you look at groups of cisgender men and women, the levels of hormones can be all over the place, especially with athletes. So it's a real challenge to try to define like a normal range of testosterone and estrogen and other hormones, and say that unless you fall into these categories, you are or you aren't a woman or a man. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, but I like sports where it's like anybody could have an advantage. Like maybe if you're really short, that might give you an advantage in some parts of the sport. Ultimate Frisbee?
Everything. Yeah. All sexes and
yeah, there's Ultimate Frisbee.
Well,
there's
an
American Ninja Warrior. There's the show called American Ninja Warrior, and you see men and women both competing on the course. And, you know, everybody can finish it. And so I think it's interesting, like maybe we just need to kind of shift our sports towards sports where there aren't those sex-based categories, and like anyone can compete in the sport and have kind of a fair chance at being able to compete.
Yeah, that was kind of like the solution, or well, my suggestion, I should say. You know, when the conversation came up, was just that, well, it's just time for new sports. In fact, Josh, maybe you'll remember this movie. I think it was from like '98. Was it Starship Troopers, or was that like '96 or '98? Brilliant. Yeah, great movie, right? And in the beginning, they're playing that game of football. I don't know if you remember, or it's like football, but men and women are playing side by side, and everybody's just kind of playing up the strengths. And so I gave that example. I'm like, well, we just need, you know, new sports that just allow for any body type and whatever, and you just roll with that. So and I think that's exciting. I mean, a lot of even new sports today are something that really networks are looking for anyway, because the only way, you know, nobody watches commercials anymore unless you're watching live TV like sports. So I think new sports, new athletic things, kind of like American Ninja Warrior, like you said, Stephanie. I mean, I think that's kind of the direction. If you want to solve, well, how does everybody get to play ball? Well, that's how you just make new types of ball games. So,
well, not only that, that's why I brought up Frisbee, because it is multi-sex, and and they don't have a I don't know the German word, like a
referee.
A referee, that's the English. God, I'm living here in Berlin. They don't have a referee, right? And that's also this sort of anarchic philosophy, which I like behind it. But what happens is that when this crowd, like a friend of mine, he films Ultimate Frisbee professionally. He goes around and films these event tournaments and streams them. And he was at one event where the whole crowd went, replay, like they were all chanting replay, and then as soon as the replay came on, they all went out. It was just like the crowd made the choice, and then they went, okay, that was but actually what actually happens is the teams decide. They go, was it out, what was out, and they talk and they decide and they go, okay. And it's kind of interesting. Sorry to divert, but I love the idea of you know, not having the referee and also being multi-sex. It's great.
How many incidents are there of transgender people trying to play in the first place? Does this happen often?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't seem to happen very often because there just aren't that many transgender people, and then even fewer of them are going to be athletes to the level that you would need to compete in professional sports. But every time a transgender athlete wins something, people always cry foul and say, oh, it's because, you know, that it was like a trans woman who wins in the woman's category. And they say, oh, she's not a real woman because she was born a man or something like that. And so it gets a lot of press when it does happen, but I think the instances are actually quite rare.
I would think so too. I don't know, guys. I know it's not PC or whatever, but I gotta, I mean, how many people are having such a variety in their testosterone levels? Like, I had originally listened to this episode, and my initial reaction was like, come on, man, this is not okay. But number one, where do trans people go if they want to play sports, which I think is a legitimate thing.
Yeah. And trans sport club.
The hormone levels that they're taking are apparently making them more feminine, therefore taking away some of the male advantage. But they still have like big bones, big legs and stuff. That I don't know how much that deteriorates because of their move toward transitioning, I guess, and whatever hormones they're taking. Like, I don't know how much of a thing that is, but if I were one of the women, I'd be super pissed. If I was a trans person, I'd feel really left out. So I don't think it's, while it would be nice to like encourage new sports and we could do that, like I don't think that all the beefcake, you know, football lovers in America are gonna be like, yeah, let's just start watching Frisbee, guys. Like, forget this whole like beer and
yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I mean, maybe the answer is defining categories in sports based on things like height. If height, like in basketball or something, you could have a team of like 6 to 7 foot players and like a team of 7 foot and above. I don't know. Or I'm not really sure what the answer is. Maybe men and women categories work pretty well for most sports. But the thing is, like transgender athletes, when they're transitioning, it's like, how can you tell? You can't always necessarily tell when someone is transgender. So are we going to have, like, how is it going to be enforced? Is there going to be somebody checking like the hormone levels or the genitalia of all the players? I mean, that doesn't seem like, I wouldn't want to go play a sport if I had to suddenly get like this medical checkup where somebody like looks at my skirt, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah. That's yeah.
Turn your head and cough. No.
So fun fact, I went to medical school for 2 years and I almost became a physician, but I decided to make a career change instead and I did not finish. But while I was learning about the physical exam, I did use it as a come on to partners. Like, hey, can I practice doing the turn your head and cough thing on you?
Really?
Really?
Did this work?
She did not do this to me, by the way.
It worked every time, Tatiana.
But why do you turn your head? What's the turn your head part?
Because you don't want to be coughing on the doctor. So the reason,
okay.
Yeah, that's the reason you turn your head. People think it's something to do with like the physical thing, but that the turn your head and cough is to check for a hernia, which is commonly, you know, younger males can get that, where because of the anatomy of where the testicles go out through the abdomen and into the scrotum, there's a hole that sometimes other pieces of guts can kind of spill out if it's too big or if it's too loose. So you can see men that have like a bulge in their groin area, and that's what a hernia usually looks like, an inguinal hernia. And so to test for that, the doctor will sort of put their pinky finger up in that hole, and then they'll say cough because that increases the pressure in the guy's abdomen. And then
is this your butthole? Is this a regular? Is this
no. It's like in your groin, like where your legs kind of meet your body.
Okay.
The perineum.
No, that's not the perineum.
Or as I like to call it, the premium.
That is the taint or the gooch, as it's commonly referred to. But what I'm talking about is the front of the body where the leg kind of meets the abdominal, like stomach area. And there's like a little, you can feel it if you take like a finger, you can sort of stick it in there a little bit. And there's a tube that comes out of there, which is going to your testicles. Then it contains like arteries and veins and stuff like that. But anyway,
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now. No.
This is very entertaining radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody wants
to around for that, guys. This isn't the time.
Well, you know, it's important to be educated on all sorts of fronts, and you know, if our listeners are sitting uncomfortably, maybe you might need to get checked.
That's right. But I'm not going to be the one to check you.
No.
Unless your name is Brian Sovryn.
Thank you.
So how long has the Sex and Science Hour been running for now? It's been a while, right? I mean,
yeah, I think our first episodes were in 2014. So it's been it's been on and off. We took a long break in 2016. So we're on our 4th season. A season is about 25 episodes, and they come out every week. So you could do the math, but yeah, there's been long hiatuses in there, but it's been a thing for like about 4 years.
That's great, because there's this thing, you know, where podcasts slowly die out as people get really passionate at the start. But with any sort of, I find this actually with most things that are run off passion and there's no income coming in to sort of renew it, they can run they can run dry of that passion after a while. But seems like you've pushed on through that.
Well, definitely. I mean, and part of it is that we do make some income from the podcast, so it's not a free thing. The podcast is freely available, but we have come up with a creative way to monetize it, which is we have an Amazon affiliate link that we encourage people to shop through. It's at stuff.sexandsciencehour.com. You can visit that and go shopping through it. And that gives us a list of items that people buy through our link. And some of those items are quite perverted. So we do an after show after our regular podcast, and we go into overtime and we talk about what people bought on Amazon. And that can be really interesting, not only because of the perverted items, but because of like books and stuff that people buy. And so we get to do like book reviews. We get to do, we get to play like, oh, have you ever used that? Or what is this thing for? Or what do you think it's for?
That's really clever, because like I would want to shop there just to hear what you guys have to say about my shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can.
Yeah, like with the books, it happens all the time, and people email us afterwards and say, "Yeah, I just wanted to hear what Brian had to say about this book," you know, or what Stephanie had to say about something, you know. And yeah, it is pretty clever. Totally Stephanie's idea, by the way. You know, I have no good ideas.
I always think that that's a brilliant idea. So, I feel like New Hampshire is the perviest place on earth in a lot of ways. Maybe not, but I mean, there's a lot of pervy places in the world. But I think that New Hampshire has a lot of alternative lifestyles, right? People are kind of experimenting and stuff like that. And one of the things that is in New Hampshire are poly people, which are varyingly interesting versus annoying versus like oversharing types of folks that are living unconventional lifestyles. I read, what is the name of the book? Sex at Dawn recently, and I thought it was very interesting. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like why is that so popular there, and how is it any different from like the swinging of the 60s and 70s? Do you think that there's been an evolution where this is more accessible right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you say poly, I think you're using a shorthand for polyamorous, and polyamorous is a word that people may have heard before or maybe not. What it means is many loves. Polyamory is many loves. So it's basically people who have more than one significant other, either actively, like they're dating multiple people, or they're committed to more than one person at the same time, or they feel that they have the capacity to love more than one person at once. They may not be actively engaged in multiple relationships at the same time, but they feel that that is a good fit for them as far as lifestyle or whatever, or relationship goals. And how is that different than swinging? Well, swinging was popular in the 1970s. I think it's still popular in America today. It's just, you know, maybe taken on different terms, or it occurs in different places or spaces. But people do still do swinging. And the connotation of swinging is like usually married heterosexual couples who want to have sex with other people besides their spouse, either in group sex or just like exchanging partners and the two going off alone with somebody else's wife or husband. And sometimes they do it in clubs, and they'll do it like publicly. But swinging is more like there's no love involved. You're not loving someone else's wife or husband and they love you. You're just having sex with them, and there's not much of an emotional attachment or commitment. Usually couples who are swingers are friends with people that they swing with, but it doesn't go beyond that into love, or like, it's not like you're going to your grandmother's funeral with somebody else's husband and everybody's like, what the hell? And your family. So polyamory, love, swinging, just sex.
Yeah,
so,
no, I guess.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Tatiana.
Well, I'm wondering, how do people not kill each other in this scenario?
Good question, because yeah, I mean, we hear so much about jealousy in culture, and I think jealousy is probably something that everybody has experienced at one point or another in regard to relationships and romantic partners. And our culture, I think, really encourages jealousy as something that's normal and healthy and even expected, there's this idea that the more jealous you are of your lover if they flirt with somebody else, or if they actually go ahead and have sex with somebody else, or if they just have an emotional affair and fall in love with somebody else, even if they haven't touched that other person, you know, the more jealous you are of that, the more it means you really love your partner and the more passionate you are about them. And that's why you're jealous, because you love them so much. But it can be a really fine line between that kind of jealousy and like abusive behavior. And jealousy, I don't think is always healthy, personally. You know, I can see why people get jealous, and I think that it's kind of a normal reaction in many cases. But a lot of times, there are some people, especially, who maybe feel inclined to these kinds of lifestyles, where if they feel secure in a relationship, they don't feel jealous when they see their partner being interested in someone else, or flirting with someone else, or maybe even having sex with someone else. They may feel turned on. They may feel happy for their partner. They may want to join in, or they may feel indifferent, but they don't feel jealous. And I think that's the difference between people who practice these different styles of non-monogamy and people who practice monogamy.
Well, I think it's important to bring up too, like a lot of, I know Tatiana, you were mentioning like in New Hampshire, how it seems to be a popular thing. Well, I think what kind of happened, so first off, New Hampshire is the home state, as it were. I hate to use the word state, but the home state of the Free State Project, which is this, well, it's been talked about on your show before, but just an idea of getting a bunch of liberty lovers together in one geographic area. I think something that happens, like there's a saying, and this will play off of where I want to go with this, but there's a saying that what's the difference between, well, how exactly does it go? What's the difference between an anarchist and a libertarian that moved to, or between a libertarian and an anarchist that moved to New Hampshire? 6 months. Meaning that in 6 months, you'll become an anarchist after you move to New Hampshire as a libertarian. But what I think happens with kind of that mental awakening, and that's not to say that it's a superior form of mentality or anything, but I think there's a real questioning of just about every social norm, you know, and every social structure and infrastructure that exists. And when that happens, I think a lot of people start saying, oh, what about questioning monogamy and all of that? But unfortunately, while that happens, and that kind of lends to what could be called polyamory, I think a lot of people just end up wanting to, like, you know, screw other people. And it's not really polyamory. It'd be closer more to like what Stephanie was defining with swinging, because, you know, down the line, like maybe a year after that, you know, or 6 months after that, suddenly then, you know, maybe they'll be monogamous again, or they'll be getting in more traditional relationships. So it's not like it's really something for everybody, or that it's, I know oftentimes they can get played up, and you mentioned like some people can be very annoying about it, because a lot of people talk about like, oh, this is the enlightened path. This is, you know, this is the natural state of things. You want to, you know, you're not really a libertarian, or you're not really an anarchist if you're not polyamorous and all this stuff. Right. And that's bullshit. I mean, it's just straight up bullshit when people make that kind of claim, because it's not for everybody. I mean, there's so many things when it comes into, you know, it's not a matter of like, you know, one of the real problems that happens isn't necessarily jealousy or someone wanting to kill somebody else, you know, figuratively or maybe even literally. What really happens is that you run out of time. I mean, you only have so much time. You know, the time is the ultimate scarcity. It's the ultimate thing of intrinsic value. And you only have so much time to spend with so many people, unless, I mean, and there's different types of polyamory. You know, there's like, I forget, there was a great description where it was like the all at the table kind of polyamory. And then there's like, you know, the polyamory where everybody kind of lives somewhere else. Meaning there's a polyamory where everybody's in love with each other, you know, like maybe it's a triangle, or a triad, or maybe it's a rhombus or something, and everybody's kind of together, you know, and all in love with each other. Or maybe only one person's in love with this, you know, part of the whatever geographic shape it is, and so on. So there's so many different ways that it goes. But I mean, oftentimes you run out of time, you know, so it's not for everybody. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. And I do bristle when anybody talks about it and says, oh yes, this is, you know, this is the way to be, this is the nature of humanity and all that stuff. Because it's up to preference. Go ahead.
You bring on some really interesting points, and I remember reading or seeing this documentary about bacteria. I was studying bacteria and how is bacteria to blame for love and actual people sticking together, and then they they brought the science behind that was that there was this bacteria that switches a certain part in the serotonin or something in the brain that when you orgasm, it draws you to that partner closer. And they then experimented on a type of hamster. One breed of this hamster are known to just have sex and then just have sex with everyone and just never really pair up. And then another strain of the same hamster was very, very always in a couple there. Once they screwed, they were together for life, and even when one died, the other one would almost die because they just would never pair up again. They realized the difference in the brain, and they took the bacteria that they thought was changing it and injected it into the go crazy ones, and they changed to become really pair loving. And they sort of was using that as proof of that, well, it's actually bacteria to blame, or as part of the evolutionary way of humanity has gone. And I guess there was evolutionary reasons to stay single. But I think, there's a lot of people that I know that are, I don't know a lot of them, but the ones that I do know, a lot more communal. They really love communities. They love, a lot of take care of, of each other and it's more communal. Yeah. So
That's really interesting, Josh. I mean, yeah, it's true. We're finding out now that the bacteria that inhabit our bodies do influence our behavior in some ways, as far as what foods we choose to eat, what choices that we make, gaining and losing weight, and even behavioral stuff like perhaps pair bonding. I didn't know about that study, but I'm going to look it up now. But yeah, it's been known for a while that some animals are more inclined towards sort of this monogamous pair bonding, where two animals will stick together for as long as it takes to raise their children or just their entire lives. And some animals are more in the opposite direction, where they don't really bond. They're more solitary and they only come together to reproduce, but don't stick together in any meaningful way. And it's really interesting because humans love to put their own ideas about marriage and monogamy and relationships onto animals. I remember Brian's nodding his head because you're probably thinking of the same thing I am, Brian, which is that movie about the penguins where there were these Christian groups that were talking about how penguins, marry each other and they mate for life and stuff like that, when actually usually the way it works in nature is they stick together, but only for as long as it takes their hatchling to grow up or whatever. But yet humans were calling it things like marriage. And obviously penguins don't have marriage, animals don't have marriage. That's a human cultural thing, but we like to describe it with that language. So you always have to be careful of that. But I would like to say I'm going to go ahead and defend the annoying polyamorous people for a minute. No, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, Tatiana, and I've seen some of the things too. When people take a chance and try out a lifestyle or embrace a lifestyle that's different than the cultural norm, they're going to have a lot of eyes on them, watching them to see if they fail or succeed, right? And people are going to be interested because it's different. And so, a lot of most relationships don't work out in the sense that the people are together forever, right? I mean, most people date a lot of guys or girls or non-binary people before they get married and settle down. And even sometimes when people get married in a monogamous marriage, it ends in divorce and it doesn't last forever. And also there's cheating in monogamous relationships. I've seen statistics that, 70% of monogamous relationships, ostensibly monogamous relationships, involve some element of cheating, where one or both partners is having an affair behind the other person's back. And so there's some ways to do monogamy wrong that everybody has seen already and everybody is familiar with, like cheating on your partner or being possessive and controlling. That's another way to do monogamy wrong, I would say. And then there's ways to do polyamory wrong, right? Not being completely honest with your partners. You can still cheat in polyamorous relationships if you're breaking the commitments that you've made with your partner or partners. and doing things that you've agreed not to do with your existing partners.
Or
also,
becoming extremely jealous when you've made a decision not to be.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I would say some people, like, you can't really control how you feel or what emotions you have. You can control how you respond to a situation and how you express how you feel, but you can't really control how you feel. And so I think, like, with healthy polyamorous relationships, the idea is not to never feel jealousy, because it is going to come up sometimes, but it's like how you handle the jealousy. Do you talk about it with your partner honestly, and does your partner really listen and feel compassion for you about that jealousy? Or does your partner brush it off and say, I don't care, I'm going to do whatever I want, and you better just accept it or you're going to lose me?
Yeah.
I think, you know, when I first heard about polyamory, I was like, oh, these schmucks, you know, because I like monogamy. But I started thinking, by the way, I learned what a schmuck is. It's actually a very bad word. It's the tip of the penis.
Oh, I didn't even know that, and I have a family.
Sorry. But no, my Jewish dentist told me that, and I was like, wow. Sorry to say that in front of you. But you know, I like monogamy. I want the whole big thing or whatever. But over the years, I have had relationships with different people at the same time, and I consider myself to be a good person and stuff. And then all of a sudden, I started thinking, well, I like this person and I like this person, and how I feel about this person doesn't at all actually affect how I feel about this person. So that made me a little bit more open-minded about it. And also, you know, I was listening to Sex and Science Hour, and I think that you guys sort of present it in a way. And I think the key thing that differentiates maybe your explanation versus another one is the focus on respecting all the people in the party, right? And I think that even whether or not I decided to be a poly person, I think it's really good to learn about human nature. And I think that my interest in it has been to really improve communication, because even if you end up married to a person, you guys have kids, blah, 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 you want to stay together, there are waxing and waning periods of desire for one another. And having a little bit more of a realistic perspective, I think, can be very helpful, especially in a culture where people are cheating on each other. Like, I wouldn't want someone to cheat on me, but in a way, maybe it's better to know, or at least have some sort of an open communication. Do you guys have any tips, though, for people who are monogamous and that want to be able to live in that lifestyle based off of some of your knowledge of these other techniques? Like, is there a way to balance these things together? I would think it's an individualized approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like what you said, Tatiana, about learning about communication, because if you're going to have a multiple person relationship, there's going to have to be a pretty high level of ability to communicate for everybody involved. And, you know, it's going to be work to maintain that open sense of communication so that everybody feels heard and understood, and everybody feels that their partners understand where they're coming from, or they're metamors. Metamors is a partner of a partner. So it's like, you know, not a paramour that's like your lover, but it's a metamor. It's your lover's lover. So for everybody involved to feel heard and understood is really important. But that's important in a monogamous relationship too. And the better you are at communicating, the more success you're going to have in any relationship, whether it's your lover, your family member, your boss, your coworker, whatever. It just helps being able to communicate. So as far as tips of if you're interested in polyamory, oh yeah, one more thing along those lines.
No, I want tips for if you're not interested in polyamory, but I guess we got that one.
Oh, for if you're not interested in, okay, well, that's good. That's leading into
like, how do you keep the spice going? That's the question.
Okay, so first of all, monogamy is a valid choice. And that is something that you don't hear some people who are really interested in polyamory say. They think that polyamory is an enlightened path and that you're better if you're poly or whatever. But that's not true. I mean, everybody should get to choose how they want to structure their relationships. And hopefully they're doing it from a place of awareness and from a conscious place, and not just taking the defaults that culture says your relationships have to be like. I think that's the appeal of polyamory to a lot of people, actually. It's like they don't want to just have a monogamous relationship when it doesn't feel like that fits them because culture tells you, okay, that's how relationships are. They want to question, okay, is that really how relationships have to be? Is that how I want my relationships to be? And then they decide from there. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said. But at the same time, if you question whether the cultural standard of relationships fits you, and the answer is yes, it fits me just fine, monogamous relationships are what I really want, that's totally fine. I mean, and valid. And monogamous relationships work really well for a lot of people. So there's nothing wrong with them, and there's nothing wrong with choosing it. But I do like when people choose rather than just take the, take the default option, because it's always better to have more choices.
I feel like people get bullied into polyamory relationships sometimes because they feel like they're going to lose their partner if they don't go along with it. And I think that that's what rubs a lot of people the wrong way, is that thought. It's oftentimes cast as the woman who's just like, I need him to stay with me and he wants to bang 40 of my friends, so I'll just go along with it. And how do you differentiate with the people who are making conscious adult decisions? Then again, I mean, who's the one who's judging if their decisions are that? But I mean, I think that that's a popular concern and sort of a turnoff.
Yeah, no, and that definitely does happen. One partner wants to be non-monogamous and the other partner wants to be monogamous. But the one who wants to be monogamous says, all right, well, I guess I have to take this deal or I'll lose my partner. And so they get sort of forced into something that they don't really want. And obviously that's not ideal for them. And it's selfish of the other partner because they're not really recognizing, or they're not really listening to what their partner wants.
I think that's why it ends up in communities more, because people that live in communities are that, and people that join the community know that's the case. Whereas when you're starting out in wanting to become poly, you're usually in a monogamous relationship and then want to jump into that space a bit more.
Sure. Yeah, I'll tell you, Tatiana, like with what you were saying about what's a tip for monogamous people, maybe to keep the spice alive, keep the fire alive. I think that's what you were asking. I kind of everybody can, after a fashion, they can be monogamous and sort of polyamorous at the same time. And let me explain how that works. And normally I don't like to recommend this guy's work, and I'm not recommending it now, but it's his point, so I just want to give him credit. But there's the author John Gray, who's very, very famous relationship author.
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah, I mean, really, take his books, ball them up into a crumpled paper, put them in like a slingshot, and just launch them, because you don't need those. They're terrible. But anyway, he had one really great suggestion I remember once, and the suggestion is that once a month at least, you and your partner, if you're in a monogamous relationship, you and your partner go get a hotel or motel room or something like that, and go there, and you can be, I mean, first off, you're going to be in new surroundings than your house. So you're already like changing the game a bit. You're already changing, your usual day-to-day affair. Then, if you want to, you could pretend to be kind of other people. I think something that a lot of people in general, this isn't even just for relationships, and there's been a degree of research and studies on this as well, that reading fiction or like consuming fiction, maybe, fictional content of whatever sort, may be more important than even like consuming nonfiction, because fiction allows you to, it sparks your creativity, your imagination, to where, you can get out of personal ruts, whatever they happen to be. And so I think like, that's something to kind of help, because if you go to like this hotel room or motel room, say once a month or something like that, and then you pretend to be other characters or something, your wife could pretend to be somebody else, however that shapes up, or you could pretend to be somebody else. Obviously, if you consume fiction, you can probably do a better job of that, and you could be more creative, because maybe you feel like you're just not a creative person. Well, that's a way to get that spark going. But yeah, I mean, you could kind of be other people, and you could sort of revitalize that a bit in that way. And I mean, also, I think this is great advice for a single person as well as a person in a monogamous or polyamorous relationship. Just always be learning. I mean, like, you have that life of just constantly learning, because then your brain, I know they have that saying where like every 72 hours or something, or every 10, I don't know, some stupid amount of time, you're a completely new person because you've wiped off all your skin cells or something and you have all new skin cells, right? Well, I mean, your brain can really kind of, if you're constantly learning and constantly maybe taking in other content and everything, you know, your brain becomes almost a new brain as well to some degree. You know, you get more wrinkles, you get all this stuff. So that's ways to keep exciting, is to just keep growing, or even to have those once a month or whatever, to where you are somebody else, you know, and you get to play out some kind of fantasy or something like that. I know that takes creativity.
Good advice.
Yeah, there we go. So that's what we got.
Well, I like the creativity. Where are your favorite sources of erotica? I mean, porn, everybody knows, you know, Pornhub, whatever. Like, you Google around, there's millions of options. But I think, you know, I used to read a lot of erotica, and I feel like it's a lost art. I mean, even those crappy letters to pen house, what I liked about those books, the collections, was that everyone was different. But I also feel like language is a really big aphrodisiac, but it could also kill the buzz real fast. Do you guys have any kind of erotica sources that you think are good for couples that are looking to spice it up?
Yes. There are a number of anthologies that are called Best Women's Erotica. They also have themed ones, like if you're into bondage or BDSM, they'll have like Best Bondage Erotica. Rachel Kramer Bussell and Tristan Taormino have edited a lot of those. Sachi Green is another editor that does lesbian anthologies, erotica anthologies. And I mean, I think there is like the erotica that I've looked at has been sort of geared towards women or whatever, but that doesn't mean it's any less sexy or anything like that. I think what they're going for is just a little bit more of a story and a plot line, because some people really need that to feel turned on. And if you're looking for that, you can get that in a short story as long as it's well written. So I would recommend check out some of the best erotica anthologies that are edited by those ladies.
Well, I just bought Bitcoin Bell's book off Amazon. And
really, what book is that? I haven't heard about it.
Yeah, it's have I got it here? Oh, I haven't got it here, but it starts off very erotic, and wow. I didn't know that. I was sitting on the train, and as a man, it's kind of embarrassing to get up for your station.
This is why they make Kindle books. You see,
yeah,
nobody can
exactly.
see the cover.
No, the cover's not bad. It was the content. No, also, yeah, a great book. It's about a person that runs a dark web service, and yeah, very interesting, very cool.
Wait, what's the name of the book? Let's give her a little prop.
Oh man, I'll find out. I just have to go get it. It's over there.
Okay, you're a failed friend. Bad promo for Bitcoin Bell, but check it out, guys. She's always promoting it on her Twitter. I imagine she's a very sexual woman. I imagine that she would have some good erotica.
It's very good, and and it's it plays on what Brian was saying just there about hotel rooms once a month.
I love that advice that Brian gave of, you know, pretend to be someone else. And I mean, he basically said this, but didn't call it explicitly role playing, which is what you were describing, Brian. But yeah, role playing can be so much fun, and it doesn't require anybody else. Another thing that might be fun if you're looking to do something different is bring in some toys, you know, or just make items around your house that aren't necessarily sex toys into sex toys.
Like
you
bread
can tie
rollers. No, just kidding. Don't use a bread roller.
I mean, you could if you wanted to, if that's your thing. But I was thinking more along the lines of, like, you know, an eye mask that you use for sleeping can turn into a blindfold. Or you can tie someone up with a scarf or a silk tie or a yoga strap or something like that. You can use pillows as sex furniture. There's a lot of creative things that you can do and make everyday objects into so-called pervertibles, which is like when you use objects that aren't necessarily sex toys as sexual implements.
You know, I think that you guys are totally right on, because I think there was this woman, I want to say she's like French, she has some sort of an accent, and she was talking about how it's basically a balance of security and novelty, right? When you first have a relationship, it's novel, it's exciting, and then you build up and you have security, and that's very valuable. but then that novelty wears off. So as long as you're sort of introducing something new into it, that seems to be like a really good way to kind of grow with your partner. I think it can also be quite scary. Like people who think, you know, so people are really into threesomes, right? I feel like a threesome is a very dangerous prospect because, you know, you could say like, you know, say like a regular like guy and girl relationship and like, oh, let's bring in a babe or let's bring in a dude. Nobody ever suggests bringing in a dude, incidentally. I point out that
We've heard of it. We've heard of it. It's a little more rare, but yeah, the 2 women, 1 man is a common fantasy.
I'm so surprised that they would think of that. But anyway, also women's sexuality is a little bit more fluid and also approved culturally. So I think that that has something to do with it. But you know, you never know what's going to happen. What if your boyfriend likes the other girl more? And what if somebody feels left out? So I think that that is a dangerous road to even experiment with, because then people are going to throw that in your face for the next 5 years. That time you grabbed her boob longer than mine, you know? So,
well, there's a good solution to that, which is, and there's also the problem of finding that hot bisexual single woman who wants to sleep with you both. You know, a lot of couples have that problem where they're trying to look for somebody or procure somebody for a threesome, but they're having trouble finding the right person because it's so rare. It's actually referred to as a unicorn. They call that girl a unicorn because she doesn't exist most of the time. But one thing you can do that solves all of the problems we just talked about is make that third person a sex worker. And that way you don't have to worry about anybody falling in love and wanting to leave their partner for the third person, because the third person, it's very clear, she's there because she's being paid and she's got experience with threesomes, hopefully, so she knows what to do so that nobody feels left out. And she's going to be focused on just making sure it's a good time and making everybody feel comfortable. So, and I mean, that's work. I feel like, you know, somebody who's doing that is providing a valuable service and should get paid for it.
Well, you know, I think this is the future that a lot of people like see coming. It's already being developed. A lot of people, you know, are very questionable or are very concerned about the technology. But I think I've said this many times on the show, Sex and Science Hour, sex robots. I mean, these are coming. These are going to be here. They're already kind of here. I think the #1 market for sex robots are going to be married couples. Like, I think they're going to buy them, you know, just like as soon as they hit the shelves, because here is the ultimate in safety of engaging in a threesome or whatever else. Now, I mean, there's concerns to be had around the ethics of, you know, when is a robot, you know, maybe it doesn't, you know, get a degree of consciousness or something, certainly, but that's another conversation to be had. But I think one of the real solutions will be sex robots. And like I said, I don't, you know, most people, when they hear about sex robots, like, oh yeah, all those creepy guys, they're going to use them and all those schlubs are going to end up using them and everything. I don't think so at all. I think the #1 market, I think they're going to be huge, and absolutely the #1 market's going to be married couples.
I picture R2-D2 and I'm like, I don't really see how that works. But
Just like a giant weird dildo.
Just remember, every vibrator is a sex robot.
That's true.
So I got Bitcoin Bell's book. Here it is, CC Me.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
nice.
called CC Me. And
very good. So our
Stuff.sexandsciencehour.com, unless you have one, Tatiana, you want people to use.
No, I don't. And I usually promote the free Ross one, but for erotica,
yeah.
I think it matches Sex and Science Hour. I'm not saying that I've done that before, but I'm just saying if people want to purchase erotic items, they can get them at this stuff.sexandsciencehour link.
I was going to just bring back the science for a second to what Brian was. To what Brian was saying about you know, doing new things once a month and keeping the brain plastic, meaning malleable, is really a big cure for also Alzheimer's and these sort of things. Is what people are saying is when you change it up, instead of walking to work the same way every day, just mix it up, walk a different way. And I think in relationships, by doing other things that are wacky, that are out of the blue and a bit different, also help you and help your brain stay plastic and not locked into some sort of dogmatic eventuality. And so yeah, Just
yeah. Now, you know, I'll add on to that. My recommendation for like a great source for erotic material is actually everything. Like I myself, you know, when I watch, I don't know, just some terrible movie. I'll pick one out of the blue from the 90s, Wing Commander. Okay. Now, when I watch that movie, I mean, for most people, I love it, but for most people, it's a terrible film, a science fiction film. I'll add in like the sex scenes when I'm watching it. Like that's just how my brain works. I'll add all this stuff in, but in so doing, like I'm kind of going through that creative process and I'm turning almost everything. I mean, it's amazing. The worst movies in history suddenly become masterpieces because you've added in, you know, these very hot threesomes or a full orgy scene or something, or maybe, you know, you're maybe watching Conan the Barbarian, right? And you extend the orgy scene that's already there or whatever. So I think you can make almost anything into kind of an erotic resource of material. Just start using your own brain and go wild with it. And I think that'll help you also, like what Josh is saying about the, you know, the plasticity of the brain. It's really a wonderful thing.
Funnily enough, in Germany here, when I first moved to Berlin when I was 16, it was very exciting being a teenager and seeing television over here. It was like,
the ads alone.
Australia, it's very sort of, you know, you don't show much nudity. You'd maybe have Revenge of the Nerds where you see one boob quickly past screen and you're like, yes, you know. But in Berlin, and the shows were like at 10 o'clock at night, you'd see some sort of a Star Trek ripoff, but full sex scenes thrown in there. And it was quite amazing.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay. I feel like that was like an awkward ending.
Well, no, there's more. Okay, one more tip. Oh, good. All
right, I like it.
Who want to spice it up? If you're willing to go there, you may not be willing to go here. It might be too non-monogamous for you. But if you're open to a little bit of non-monogamy, but not sure if you want to actually dip your toe into the waters of being with other people, you can always talk dirty about other people to your partner. Like, oh, did you see her walk by? She's really hot, huh? Wouldn't it be fun if she was in bed with us or something like that? And, you know, that can make some people jealous, but some people are fine with that kind of talk as long as it stays fantasy and doesn't actually happen in real life. So there's another way to keep things interesting.
Well, I think you got to check in with the person, right? Like you have to be able to read the person. Like I had a guy that did that to me. And I thought it was horrible. He would use all my friends. I was like, what are you doing?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's sad. Sorry.
It was awful. I mean, I could see, but the thing is that if that had been a healthy relationship, we had built a foundation, then I think that it would be maybe a little bit, first of all, I don't want to hear about my friends. Sorry. Love you guys. But like, that's like a separate category for me. But like, I think that, you know, having that stability and making sure that you're respecting and paying attention to the reaction of the partner that you're with, because and also sometimes people will act like they're cool with it, but then later on it bothers them. So if you actually give a shit how that person feels later, you check in with them, you make sure that you're telling them like you're wonderful, blah, blah. I think that really mitigates some of the issues. And that I think doesn't even just go for like, I think that's not just like with sexy talk or even sexual acts, but like staying in communication and making sure that that other person's feelings are heard. And maybe they're not priority number one every waking moment of the day because it's sort of an unrealistic expectation, but making sure that you respect that initial bond, I think is really critical.
Yeah, I'm one thing that I think is similar to what Stephanie was saying is going, if it's really dry and you're kind of feeling bored of each other, go to a bar and look bloody hot, both of you, and then see, you know, watch other people flirting with your other one. And that then brings back this spark of, ooh, I want her, or I want him.
Yeah.
And then you go home and you know, like you first saw each other again. That's also nice. To sort of play with jealousy in a positive way, rather than always being the negative, but yeah, bringing that jealousy a little bit on board.
I think there is something to that. Like that's why all these Bachelor and Bachelorette are so popular. It's because like, you know, it's like, how can all these 25 women be competing for the same guy or something like that? Like really, wouldn't they just find another guy? But it increases his attractiveness in their eyes if they see that other people are also attracted to him.
Yep.
What do you guys have in terms of relationship books? Do you have any recommendations there?
Well,
I mean, erotic is all fine and dandy, but okay, so we're not doing Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. We're giving a thumbs up to the Ethical Slut and the Sex at Dawn book. Ethical Slut, to me, not quite as good. I'm a little insulted. No, I'm just kidding. It's like taking back the word. But I mean, do you guys have any other recommendations for stuff that you think has been like helpful for different people that you know, maybe for yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I like that you mentioned The Ethical Slut. That is a book that is widely considered to be the polyamory Bible. And I don't know if anything is the Bible except the Bible, but there's plenty of polyamory in the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I mean, what?
I don't read the Bible. I don't know these things. What was Jesus like? Or what's going on?
No, it's more like the Old Testament. Like there's a lot of polygamous marriages where it's one man that has multiple wives, and that's considered pretty normal for high status men or whatever. And they treat their wives like property.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty normal in that book to go and stone a rape victim to death as well.
Yeah.
Outside, as long as it was outside the city gates.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Lots of in the Bible?
Oh yeah, there's some shocking stuff in that.
I've never read the Bible. I feel like all these religious books are so boring. I mean, maybe they're interesting to somebody, but the Old English and everything, I don't really see the point.
I completely agree, Tatiana. Holy crap. Well, something that's not written in Old English. Yeah. Something that's not written in Old English. You know, for relationships in general, I really like books about nonviolent communication, or NVC. And it's a way of communicating that the basis of it is that we're all human beings. We all have certain things that we need or value, and we at least have that in common with each other. No matter who it is, if it's another human being, you have certain basic needs in common with them. And when our needs are met, we feel positive, happy feelings. And when our needs are not met, we feel negative, sad feelings. And we can understand where other people are coming from just based on that. Even if it seems like we disagree with them or we're butting heads, we can at least understand where they're coming from. And so that's really helpful for me in resolving conflicts and as just a communication tool in general.
What is, and is there like a quick overview of how people can use it, or it's just like, don't talk in an angry way?
There's not really a quick overview of how people can use it, except just that understand that every feeling that people have, or everything that they do, is an attempt to meet their needs. And sometimes and we all have the same needs. And sometimes they're going about it in a way that's not very likely to get their needs met. And so even if we disagree with the strategy they're using, we can see that they're doing it because they're trying to meet some underlying need, and it's the same needs that we have. So it just increases like empathy and in communication. That's like the shortest way I could describe it. I don't know, Brian, what do you think? Did I do an okay job?
I think you did great. Of course, that wasn't NVC of me to say that, but yeah, I mean, as far as relationship books, I would second that like maybe an NVC book, like there's one by Kelly Bryson, which is Don't Be Nice, Be Real. That's a fantastic book, in my opinion. But really, I think the great relationship book that addresses kind of humanity in the 21st century doesn't exist. I mean, like the NVC books may be the closest thing, but I mean, things are changing so drastically all around the world as far as like, you know, what people consider norms as far as relationships go. I mean, because kind of like we were saying with the Bible, yeah, sure, you know, thousands of years ago, women being treated like property, or even just 100 years ago, women being treated like property was, you know, order of the day. Of course, they're property. They're not human. I mean, there's still plenty of people that think that now. But you know, now today you have where, oh no, actually we can have, say, multiple women or multiple men, or, you know, homosexuality or whatever in a relationship. It could be 10 people in a relationship together. But at the same time, like, they're not being treated like property anymore, to where there's like a set amount of laws that address them. So, you know, you can have the kind of the similar numbers that humanity has experienced in its far past or recent past, but then love is actually the name of the game now. In fact, I'd even argue that marriage and love are really two very recent you know, productions. Like, I mean, like the idea that marriage and love were something that went hand in hand has probably only been around, I would almost guess, I think it'd be a stretch to say 100 years. In my
it
opinion.
seems more like a contract.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like
the bread and butter, the boring stuff, and it's really men
right.
just got married to a lot of women, and
yeah. So today it's all very different. You know, there's a lot of different experimentation into what love looks like, what relationships look like. So I don't think there's a really great book out there that really addresses the human condition today and what it's become or what it's returned to, or, you know, however you want to think about it.
This is good stuff, guys. I feel like we had a good show. Is there anything else that we want to cover? I know Brian just put out his book. I want to make sure that we plug that, because it's helping everybody become secure. Brian, tell us real quick.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, this is something that'll help. Here's some relationship advice. If you want to spice up things, use the Signal app and like encrypt all of your sexy texts to each other. And like, believe me, you'll start getting, yeah, you'll start getting hot and bothered like out of nowhere. But if you want to know how to do that, okay, you know, to make it seem like it's all very secret and all this, you want to get my book, which is dark. You can find it at darkandroid.info, and it's Dark Android, the 2017 edition, the no nonsense guide to securing your device and reclaiming your privacy.
very good.
I think it's only $2.99. It's only on Kindle right now, but check it out, and you know, you might spice things up on its own. So yeah. Can
I throw a question in there then? Because I'm getting chat program overload.
Oh yeah.
And you know, Telegram is what I sort of went to because so many people were using it. But then you know, Snowden recommended Signal, and then WhatsApp got encryption, and so I'm just, how trustworthy for the common man or the common woman is things like WhatsApp, who say they're encrypted, or Telegram, compared to something like Signal?
Sure. So Signal's definitely the gold standard. I will say, I'll just caveat quickly, my number one choice is still PGP emails, but I understand for a lot of people that can be very complex, even though for like Android, there's apps. In fact, it's in my book. It's covered how it's very easy to set up PGP email. But anyway, as far as these chat apps go that are just easy, install and boom, and away you go, Signal's really the best. And I'll just explain why briefly. So WhatsApp, as well as Facebook Messenger, even though it does it in a bit of a different way, they both use what's called the Signal protocol, or we used to be called the XLOTL protocol. And so I think there's this notion, there's this kind of popular idea that, oh, it's using the Signal protocol, so it's fine. So like, you know, that this is just as secured as the best encryption in the world, which the Signal protocol in many ways is. That's not true at all. In fact, there's already been a lot of evidence to show that WhatsApp, well, first off, so, and in fact, I gave a talk at PorcFest this year, and I talked about this briefly there, which when Moxie Marlinspike, the guy that created Signal and created the company Open Whisper Systems, when he said that they implemented the Signal protocol on WhatsApp, he said they did a good job. He didn't say they did a perfect job. He said they did a good job. And he said the same thing for Facebook Messenger. And I think that might be a little bit of a canary, saying that, be careful here.
Right.
And also there's some degree, like I say, of evidence in the code that no, Facebook can still collect what you're saying.
Well, the biggest pointer for me was I read this news press release that WhatsApp is going to be targeting its users for advertising. And I thought, hang on a minute, how is that possible if all my shit is just gobbledygook?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then, yeah, so that was a big red flag.
Yeah, so you want to use Signal and just the raw Signal app. Now, Telegram has other challenges, but the main challenges with Telegram, it's run by an anarchist. I mean, Pavel Durov is a full-on triple black wearing, you know, he's a man of tomorrow of the East, quite frankly. And but the thing is he used a new protocol called MT Proto, which a lot of people think is pretty patchwork. And so there's concerns around that. There were some valid concerns back in 2015 that Telegram was storing things in plain text on your phone, which that's the antithesis of encryption. So, you know, that's not a good idea. So Telegram is still great, though, in my opinion, because it's such a great, it's so feature rich. It's an awesome platform to get people off of getting their communications off of Facebook. So I still think Telegram's very valid, regardless of the concerns around encryption. But yeah, the best thing to use is the Signal app, just straight up. Good
advice. Good advice. Yeah, and I've heard the book is sensational. And I think Android is really, people, especially now with cryptocurrencies, and for all our crypto users, I mean, we're a very crypto-heavy show here, folks, and we understand that. And today we're delving into the secrets of the human desires. But in terms of what most people are now using their phones as kind of a hot wallet, and really not only that, as kind of a cold wallet, I should say. And I'm starting to see reports of some app that was using some crazy way of rooting the phone, meaning root access, sexy way, but in a very all permissions, the root of the tree, and actually stealing a lot of data, being able to turn off the camera, on the camera, microphones, what friends you call, recording calls, like it could do. These hackers could take over everything. So how do people defend our virus things? Because I've also heard our virus scans are pointless for phones, because phones are built so differently to computers. They're a lot more compartmentalized. Is that true?
Yeah. So like how to protect against all of that. And I mean, there is a concern, because really it's not so much that, well, okay, so I'll try and make this quick. So operating systems are actually, in a way, they're less secure. Like a full-on general purpose operating system like you use on your laptop, like Windows or even Linux or something like this, which Android is really just Linux. After a fashion, they're less secure because they're meant to do everything, as to where a mobile operating system has been tailor-made to do very specific things. So one could make the argument that really the most secure device out there, and then people might think that this kind of kills my own book, but not really. The most secure device out there is an iOS device, you know, would be like an iPhone or an iPad, because it's built from the ground up. Also, again, we know from the varying leaks that have been, you know, security, or like, you know, WikiLeaks and what Snowden has said and all this, usually Apple's products are shaping up very nicely, you know, in those scenarios, or at least they're not as bad off as, say, Windows or Android or something like this. So in a way, iOS is kind of, and I'm not the only security researcher to say this, Matthew Green has also said it, is kind of the best thing out there. But there's something to be said for things being purpose built. And, you know, I'll tell you, in the crypto space, I mean, I'm just going to toss this out there because I like to whenever I get the chance to take a jab. You know, I mean, this is the same thing with Ethereum. I think Ethereum is inherently insecure and inherently problematic because it is general purpose. You want purpose built things. That's how you get real security. Like Bitcoin,
that attack vector is huge.
Right. Where Bitcoin was limited by design by Satoshi, so that way it was more secure. You know, when you start making things Turing vulnerable, then not Turing complete, but Turing vulnerable, I mean, I think that's bad news. So yeah, you kind of like purpose built, like a smartphone, which I think you have a few more options to be secure. But I mean, there's arguments that can kind of go both ways on that. So anyway, there you have it.
Yeah, and when, you know, Trezor is the ultimate in just pure, or Ledger Nano, or these just hardware that's purely designed for one thing, and the attack surface is very minimal.
Exactly.
Bitcoin's the same. Bitcoin's attack surface was stripped back from Satoshi's original vision to have less and less.
Yes.
But yeah, amazing show. We've covered everything here, sex and science, as we should.
Great. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to my sponsors, and then I'll thank my guests afterward. TheBitcoinCPA.com, CryptoCompare.com, FreeRoss.org, thirdkey.solutions. This is sort of like a really crappy promotion of my sponsors today, but sorry guys. I love my peeps over at Netkey, Sovryn Tech, of course, get your book, Sex and Science Hour. I'm pretty sure people know what that is by now. Voltoro, get your gold, get your Bitcoin, hedge your stuff. I don't even know what that means, but Josh does, so have his company help you with that. Crypto Media Hub, my company, we can help you with marketing, PR, events, all sorts of excitement. My makeup is not done by Beauty Counter today, but I've been investing a fair amount of money in this amazing makeup Beauty Counter, and so now I'm like selling it, I guess, but you guys don't have to buy it. But if you want cool makeup that's really safe, this is the gold standard of safe high-end makeup. Beautycounter.com/Tatiana Rose. I'm going to be at Freedom Fest. And if you use my code Tatiana, all caps, you get $100 off your pass. So I'll be there next week in Las Vegas, and then I'll be at Mises U to do a concert with Bob Murphy and the Cool Gang. So lots of shows coming up. Can't wait to see everybody soon. Thank you very much to our guests. Do you guys want to give a quick plug for where people can find you in case they want to hire you? Especially Stephanie is a voice, what do you call it? Voice actor business. And you probably recognize her voice from a lot of different places. So quick plug opportunity, go.
Cool. Well, my podcast, sexandsciencehour.com, returning this week for season 4. And if you want to listen to my audiobooks, go on audible.com and search for my name, Stephanie Murphy. You'll find everything I've narrated. Plus, if you want to hire me for a voiceover, get in touch. My website is smvoice.info.
And you can hear the beautiful demo of Stephanie's voice on Voltoro's site, which also she narrates the What Are We videos, and amazing, beautiful voice. I highly recommend.
Excellent.
Gosh, yay. Thanks for having us on, Tatiana and Brian.
Thanks so much, everybody. Awesome. Pick up my album. Keep the faith. TatianaRose.com if you want to hear some music. I gotta start playing like little interludes on these shows. I keep saying that and never do it. But all right, love y'all. Mwah. See you not next week, but soon. Bye.
Ciao.